Funny how betrayal doesn't come with fireworks. No thunderclap. No sirens. It comes quietly, like rot. It starts in a place you trust and spreads where you don't even think to look. That's how my son's wedding hit me. I was sipping lukewarm coffee in my garage, half listening to some old Creedence record spin in the background, when my sister-in-law called me. "Have you seen the RSVP list?" she asked. I hadn't. Why would I? I was footing the damn bill. She sent it to me while we were still on the phone. I stared at it for a long minute, thinking maybe there was a second page. There wasn't. My name wasn't on it, not as father of the groom, not as speaker, not as anything. But his name was. His name. That smug, silver-haired bastard my ex-wife cheated on me with 15 years ago. The guy she swore meant nothing. The one I came home to find on my porch, shirt half-buttoned, beer in hand, feet kicked up like he belonged there. Richard goddamn Powell. And now my son, was calling him the one who stepped up. Let me take you back. I met Linda when I was 22. She was ambitious, sharp-eyed, and damn near intoxicating. I built a life around her, brick by brick, hour by overtime hour. When she said she wanted kids, I worked double shifts. When she said she wanted a house in the suburbs, I gutted my weekends to make it happen. You know what I got for that? A cold shoulder and a court date. She met Richard through her networking circle. That's what she called it. Turns out networking meant late-night drives and deleted texts. She moved out 6 months before the divorce was final and never looked back. I raised our son, Jacob, on my own for years. Not perfectly, God knows I made mistakes, but I was there. Every baseball game, every busted knee, every report card. I even bought the damn suit he wore to prom. So when he got engaged and told me he wanted to keep things neutral, I figured that meant both parents had a seat at the table. Turns out, he was the table. Jacob had been calling Richard Dad behind my back for years. Told me it just slipped out once at a family function. I brushed it off. Kids get confused. Now I realize that slip was a damn confession. I paid the venue deposit. I paid for the catering. I even paid for the tuxes. But I wasn't on the program. No speech. No seat at the head table. Richard was officiating the wedding. Let that sink in. The man who tore my family apart was now binding my son's new one together. And they expected me to sit in the back like a damn stranger. So, I did what any self-respecting father would do. I canceled every single thing. Venue? Gone. My name was on the contract. Caterers? Fired. I called the florist myself and told them to donate the flowers to a nursing home. Even the DJ, poor guy, I paid him double to not show up. I didn't tell anyone. Let them show up in their tailored suits and rental heels. Let Richard stand at the altar in front of a room full of wilting expectations and dead air. Let chaos speak for me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply reminded them whose name was on the checks and whose name wasn't on the invitation. And that was just the beginning. They say weddings are a time of joy, a time to bring families together. Not this one. By 3 p.m., guests started arriving at the venue I no longer paid for. Except the venue didn't exist anymore. Not for them. The gates were locked. Lights off. Sign removed. The building was dark and empty like the promises they made. People stood in their suits and heels in the parking lot, craning their necks, tapping phones, waiting for someone to tell them what was going on. The bride's family huddled together like a clutch of birds caught in a hailstorm. My ex-wife? She was standing next to Richard, wearing white like she was the damn bride again. She never liked being upstaged. I didn't go. I didn't need to. My absence was already speaking louder than my presence ever could. You cancel a wedding 24 hours before it happens, and people remember your silence forever. Jacob finally called me at 3:47 p.m. I was in my garage again, polishing the chrome on my old Harley, pretending I hadn't been staring at the phone all day. Dad, what the hell? I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to feel it. You canceled everything? He barked. Why would you do that? People are standing here waiting. The food, the music, the flowers, everything's gone. I took a deep breath. Son, I said slowly, if I'm good enough to pay for it, I should be good enough to be invited to it. His voice went quiet. Not gone, just scrambling, like a man caught in the collapse of a lie. I didn't think it'd matter, he muttered. I just wanted things to be easy. Less drama. Less drama. I laughed. It wasn't a warm sound. It was cold. Hollow. You chose the man who helped destroy your family to officiate your new one. And I'm a drama. He started to say something. I didn't let him. You wanted to cut me out quietly, so I returned the favor. Quietly. I hung up. He didn't call back, but others did. The bride's father, the caterer's manager, the rental company asking if they should refund the groom directly. I told them all the same thing. The contracts were canceled. The event was no longer happening. Legally, emotionally, and financially. Richard never called. Cowards rarely do. But my ex-wife? Oh, she left a voicemail that could peel paint off drywall, screaming about how I embarrassed her, how I ruined Jacob's big day, how this was typical of me, as if I was the one who stepped out, as if I was the one who tore the seams off our marriage like they were Velcro. She didn't mention the affair. Not once. They never do. They treat infidelity like a blip in the timeline and expect you to just pick up the pieces without asking who smashed the glass. Jacob's fiancée, Kelsey, bless her, was the only one who messaged me without bile in her throat. She sent me one sentence. I'm sorry. I didn't know. And I believe her. Because I know who crafted this lie. I know who pulled the strings. My ex was always good at turning guilt into theater, shame into silence. And Richard? He was just happy to play the lead, even if it meant stepping into the shoes I built with calloused hands and a spine that didn't bend. But now, those shoes are empty, and the stage is burning. 3 days passed. Radio silence from Jacob. No apology. No explanation. Not even a hey, I messed up. Just silence, thick and cowardly, like a tarp over a corpse they didn't want to claim. I got word through a mutual friend that they tried to salvage the ceremony. Rented a banquet hall 2 towns over. Small crowd. Family only. No music. No photographer. No flowers. Just Richard mumbling through vows with the enthusiasm of a tax accountant. Apparently, they even used plastic chairs. You cut out the man who raised you and still expect the celebration to feel real? It doesn't. It felt hollow. It was hollow. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way people think. That wildfire rage I had when I first saw Richard's name under officiant. That burned out already. What was left was something colder. More surgical. I started going through the finances. The receipts. The emails. Because, you see, there was one more twist in the tale they forgot to consider. I hadn't just paid for the wedding. I'd funded the engagement. The down payment on the venue. The catered tasting dinner. The dress deposit. Even the honeymoon flights. All booked on my account. Why? Because when Jacob proposed, he came to me. Told me he didn't want to wait 10 years like I had. Said he wanted to build a marriage on a foundation of support. He just didn't say whose support. I went to my attorney, Linda, the good Linda, not my ex. I had her draft a letter of reimbursement. Not a lawsuit. Not a legal nuke. Just a formal reminder that every dime tied to that ceremony, trip, and tux had come out of my pocket. It was elegant, polite, unmistakably clear, and I sent it to both Jacob and Richard, because I wanted Richard to read every word of it, to feel the weight of the man he thought he'd replaced, to know that the man he usurped still controlled the chessboard while he was busy playing checkers. Linda mailed it. Certified, signature required. 2 days later, I got a call. Jacob's voice was smaller this time. Tired. Like a kid who finally realized the candy store was closing and Daddy wasn't paying for his sweet tooth anymore. Dad, please, don't do this. I sat in my garage again. Same stool. Same coffee. Same Creedence record. But this time, the silence was mine. I asked for one thing. I said slowly. Respect. He tried to spin it. Told me it wasn't about me. Said he just felt more comfortable having Richard up there. That he didn't think I'd take it so personally. I laughed. It was short. Sharp. You thought cutting me out of the wedding I paid for wasn't personal? I didn't think you'd cancel everything. That told me everything I needed to know. They thought I'd just sit there. Swallow it. Nod politely while they shoved me into the background of my own legacy. I leaned forward and said something I'd rehearsed for days. You made your choice, Jacob. I just made mine louder. He didn't say anything after that. Just hung up. But I wasn't done yet. No, I had one last loose thread to cut. It's funny how people think walking away is weakness. That turning your back is surrender. But let me tell you something. Turning your back on people who spit on your loyalty? That's not weakness. That's evolution. After Jacob hung up, I didn't call him back. I didn't text. Didn't write. I took every photo of him off my shelves and boxed them up. Not out of spite. Just clarity. The kind of clarity you get when fog lifts after years of pretending the view was still beautiful. The night before what was supposed to be their honeymoon, I dropped off a package. Small. No return address. No note. Just a wooden box, the kind you'd find in a vintage shop. Inside, a folded piece of paper and a mirror. On the paper, I'd written 7 words. This is who walked you down the aisle. I didn't need to be there when he opened it. Didn't need to see his expression when he realized the mirror was pointed straight at him. Because truth has a way of lingering long after the room's cleared. They were headed to Mexico the next morning. But now they were going with a suitcase full of sand and that box in tow. A reminder of what they left behind, of who they buried to build their future. Meanwhile, I took my Harley up north. 2-day solo ride. No destination, just road. Gas station coffee. Wind on my face. Silence that didn't hurt. I stopped in a mountain town where no one knew my name, checked into a cheap lodge, and breathed deep for the first time in weeks. Freedom isn't always fireworks. Sometimes, it's just the quiet that follows when the noise finally dies. My phone buzzed once that night. Kelsey again. He finally saw it. I think it broke him. Good. I didn't reply. What was there to say? She didn't deserve this mess. But she walked into it, eyes open. You don't marry a man who hides the knife and acts surprised when your name ends up on the blade. The next morning, I sat in a diner. Old vinyl seats. Greasy eggs. Best damn bacon I'd had in months. I watched the snow drift quietly outside while a young couple laughed in the corner booth. And I realized something. You don't always get justice in this life. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you get distance. And distance? That's where healing lives. You want to talk betrayal? You don't start with Richard. You start with Linda, my ex-wife. She's the kind of woman who makes every room feel like a negotiation. Smiles with her teeth. Cries without tears. Always calculating. Always 2 steps ahead and 4 steps outside the line. When we first met, I thought I'd found a partner. Turns out, I'd found a tactician. She didn't marry me for love. She married me for stability. And when she found a better offer, she packed up our marriage like a summer dress, folded it neatly, shoved it in a suitcase, and walked out without a wrinkle on her conscience. But she played her part well. PTA meetings. Potlucks. Sunday mass with our son in tow. Meanwhile, she was already gone. First emotionally, then physically. The first time I knew something was off, it wasn't lipstick on a collar. It was absence in her eyes. You know what tipped me off? She started folding my laundry wrong. Yeah, sounds stupid. But for 20 years, she'd fold my shirts the same way, sleeves tucked, collar crisp. Then one day, it all changed. Sloppy folds. Wrinkled stacks. Like she was doing it just enough to say she did, but not enough to say she cared. That's the kind of betrayal people never talk about. The quiet kind. She left a year later. Richard picked her up in a car with heated seats and fake charm. And just like that, Jacob and I were alone. And you know what? We made it. I taught him how to tie a tie, how to change a tire. I showed up to every parent-teacher night while Linda was off hosting wine tastings and posting inspirational quotes about finding your true path. But somehow, somewhere along the way, she got him back. She weaseled her way in like mold behind drywall, out of sight, but always growing. Guilt tripped him. Played the poor single mother card. She spun stories about my coldness, about how I pushed her away. Never said a damn word about Richard's hand on her thigh while I was still paying the mortgage. And Jacob? God help him. He believed it. I found out later, through one of Linda's sisters, no less, that she orchestrated Richard officiating the wedding. Told Jacob it would mean a lot to her. That it would be healing. Healing. Imagine calling the man who broke your family healing. I don't blame Jacob completely. Not anymore. He was just the pawn. Linda? She was the damn queen. Always moving sideways. Always watching the board. And when I finally stepped off it, that's when her kingdom started to wobble. Because the moment I canceled that wedding, she realized I wasn't her fallback anymore. I was fire. And I was done being warm. You ever hear the sound of a throne falling? It doesn't crash. It creaks. I got a call from Linda's sister, Janine, a week after the non-wedding. I hadn't spoken to Janine in years. She was the nice one in Linda's family. The one who always seemed half apologetic for the hurricane she shared DNA with. She didn't waste time. Linda's spiraling, she said. Figured you should know. Apparently, after the wedding imploded and the honeymoon went full Titanic, Linda went on damage control mode. Full PR sweep. Told her friends I was unstable, that I sabotaged the event because I couldn't handle Jacob growing up. Claimed I was vindictive. I let her say it. Because people like her? They always tell on themselves. Given enough rope, they don't just hang themselves, they weave a stage curtain out of it. But here's the thing Linda didn't see coming. Richard was done pretending too. Janine told me he left the day after they returned from their botched honeymoon. Didn't even unpack his bag. Just poured himself a drink, said, "I didn't sign up for this circus," and walked out. Apparently, he was under the impression I'd be funding more than just the wedding. Linda told him I'd help buy them a house. That we were on better terms now. That Jacob wanted us all to be one family. One family. Imagine choking that lie down with champagne and beachfront photos while knowing you're the one who carved the rift. Linda always bid on two things, control and confusion. If she could keep you disoriented, she could keep you dependent. But now, there was no wedding, no checks, no fallback plan. And Richard? Well, Richard was never a builder. He was just the guy who moved in after I poured the concrete. That's when the messages started. Not from her. From others. From people who were there. A friend of hers from Pilates messaged me on Facebook. Someone I hadn't spoken to since the Christmas where Linda fake laughed through dinner and Richard kept refilling her wine like a waiter in a tipsy dream. I used to think she had her reasons. Now I see she just had targets. Another one, an old neighbor, wrote, "I'm sorry. We all believed her. She's not who we thought." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The house was finally quiet, and the noise was theirs now. Linda tried once, one desperate call late at night. Probably after glass number 3. I let it go to voicemail. I still have the message. Her voice, soft, practiced, said enough to feel rehearsed. "I know things went wrong, but I hope, one day, you'll remember who we were before it all. I never meant to hurt you like that." But she did. She just thought I'd never have the spine to make it cost her. He showed up at my door. Jacob. No call. No warning. Just stood there on my porch like a kid waiting to be let back in after breaking a window. I didn't rush to answer. I watched him through the peephole first. Watched how he kept adjusting his sleeves, shifting his weight like he wanted to turn around but couldn't. Eventually, I opened the door. We stared at each other. Long enough to count regrets. He looked smaller. Not in size. In spirit. Like life had finally taken off the training wheels, and he'd found out the pavement was a lot closer than he thought. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, didn't say a word. He sat at the kitchen table, same one where I used to help him with his math homework, where we celebrated his college acceptance, where he told me Kelsey was the one. Funny. A million memories soaked into that wood, and not one of them involved Richard. "I messed up," he said, finally. I didn't nod. Didn't give him the comfort he was fishing for. I just let the silence answer. He took a breath. I wanted everyone to get along. I thought, if I let things be easy, they'd fix themselves. Easy for who? I asked. That stopped him. I thought if I included Richard, he said slowly, it would mean less tension. Mom said it would help heal things. She said you didn't mind, that you'd want me to have both of you there. I chuckled, sharp and dry. Son, the man your mother left me for doesn't get to stand where I stood. He looked away. I leaned forward. You didn't just invite him. You replaced me with him. You didn't make a compromise. You made a decision. He blinked, eyes glassy. She made it sound like you'd be okay with it. That you were too proud to be involved anyway. Your mother's favorite magic trick, I said. She doesn't lie. She just lets you believe what you want, then acts like it's your idea. He ran his hand through his hair. I should have asked you. Should have God. I don't know. I just wanted peace. You wanted comfort, I corrected. Peace takes work. Comfort just means ignoring the fire while it burns down the house. We sat there a long time. Eventually, he asked, is there any way back? I looked him in the eye. Not to where we were, I said. That road's gone. But maybe we can build something new. Smaller. Slower. Earned. He nodded. A quiet, shaking nod. Before he left, I handed him something. A box. Same wood. Same size as the one I sent for the wedding. Inside? A framed photo of us. Baseball game, 2007. He's on my shoulders, both of us smiling like we owned the world. And a note. This is who raised you. Don't forget it again. It was Kelsey who called me. Not Jacob. Not Linda. Not anyone trying to salvage something for optics or pride. Just Kelsey. Her voice was steady, but her breathing gave her away, shallow and quick, like she'd just come up for air after staying under too long. Do you have a minute? She asked. Always, I said, and I meant it. She asked if we could meet somewhere neutral. Said she didn't want to talk in their apartment. Didn't want ears in the walls. So we met at a park just past downtown. The kind with benches that creak and too many squirrels. She looked tired. Not worn down, wised up. The The kind of tired you get after pretending for too long that something broken is just settling in. She didn't sit right away. Just stood there, arms crossed, watching a kid in the distance fly a paper airplane with the kind of freedom adults forget how to touch. I thought marrying into his family would mean something stable, she said. After mine. I wanted structure. History. A name that didn't come with court orders. I stayed quiet. She wasn't here for advice. I believed Jacob when he said he wanted something real. But lately, she hesitated. I realized he doesn't even know what that looks like. Did he tell you what happened? I asked. She nodded. Bits. Enough. We sat on the bench. She faced forward, as never leaving that sky like she was looking for something she'd lost up there. I told him I needed a break, she said. Time to think. And what did he say? She laughed. Once. Bitter. Said I was being dramatic. That everyone has family issues and his weren't so bad. I looked at her. What did you see? I asked. When you watched him cut me out? She didn't answer at first. Just chewed the inside of her cheek. Then, I saw a man who didn't know the difference between keeping peace and planting rot. That was when I knew. This wedding? This betrayal? It had peeled back more than one truth. Linda made you the villain, she said finally. But villains don't keep quiet. They don't step aside with dignity. They don't pay for the stage and then walk out the side door. She turned to face me then. Thank you, she said, for showing me what loyalty looks like, even when it's bruised. I nodded. Just once. Are you leaving him? I asked. She didn't flinch. I'm leaving the version of myself who thought silence would make him choose me. And that? That told me everything. I got the envelope 2 weeks after Kelsey left. Handwritten. No return address. But I knew that handwriting. Tight script. Clean loops. Linda had always written like someone watching over her own shoulder. Inside? A letter. For pages. On cream-colored stationery, like that somehow softened the sharp corners of her words. She started with a script I'd read before. I know things got out of hand. I never meant for the wedding to become a battleground. I was trying to help. Funny, isn't it? Help. She'd always used that word like a shield. Like an excuse. She helped Jacob plan the wedding. She helped Richard become more involved. She helped erase me, like I was a bad line in a good story she didn't want to rewrite, just replace. Page 2 was her version of the timeline. She claimed I'd pulled away first, that I never made space for her feelings, that Richard had stepped in during a hard time, and it just happened. Let me tell you something. Nothing just happens. Not betrayal. Not erasure. Not the slow bleed out of loyalty until you're left standing in a house full of ghosts wearing your clothes. Page 3 was where it got interesting. She said Richard was under pressure from his firm. That his sudden exit after the wedding fiasco had more to do with stress than character. Claimed he loved her. That they were working through it. I knew what that meant. Richard got spooked. He saw the mask fall off. And when the storm started coming for him instead of from her, he ran. Men like him always do. Page 4 was the plea. I know you're angry. But maybe one day, when the dust settles, we could meet. Just talk. I think we owe that much to each other, don't you? I read it 3 times. Not once did she say, I'm sorry. Not once did she say Jacob deserved better. Not once did she say she regretted what she did. She just wanted control again. Conversation is control to women like Linda. She didn't want to talk. She wanted to negotiate my memory. I didn't write back. Instead, I took her letter, folded it neatly, and slid it into the bottom drawer of my old desk. Not because it meant something, but because I want to remember the exact moment she lost her grip on the story. Because here's what Linda didn't understand. When you torch every bridge, you don't get to ask for directions. You live on the island you built. And when the tide comes in, no one's swimming out to save you. The thing about starting over at my age is, it's not the same as starting fresh. There's no empty page. Just ink stains. Creases. Coffee rings from too many nights alone. But you know what? That kind of page? It holds. It doesn't rip easy. I started small. Cleaned out the garage. Tossed the box of old trophies Jacob didn't ask to keep. Donated the wedding decor, still stashed in the attic. Took the ring I once gave Linda, the one she forgot, to return, and dropped it into the donation bin outside the women's shelter. Felt good. That was day 1 of the rebuild. Day 3, I joined a local motorcycle group. Nothing wild. Just old souls like me, veterans of war, divorce, child custody, and carpal tunnel. Guys who knew what it meant to lose the house and still fix the porch. By day 10, I'd sold off the last of the joint accounts. Everything that still had Linda's name or fingerprints on it was gone. Bank, insurance, even the Costco membership. Burned the roots. Left no seeds. Then came the diner. There's a place off Route 12. Vinyl booths, black coffee, and staff that doesn't ask where you've been. The kind of spot where the waitress calls you Han, and the regulars nod like old friends even when they've never asked your name. That's where I met Maggie. 61. Widow. Runs the bakery across the street and makes a cinnamon roll that should come with a warning label. First time we talked, she noticed I picked the pecans off the top and slid me a fresh one without them. No charge. Man who knows what he likes shouldn't have to compromise for sweetness, she said. Damn near poetry. I didn't flirt. Didn't push. But every Thursday after, she saved me the booth by the window. And somewhere between week 3 and 4, I realized this. This was what Linda never gave me. Soft loyalty. Not some grand gesture. Just small, quiet moments that didn't ask for attention. Didn't come with leverage. Just showed up. Jacob texted once that month. Said he was working through things. Good. Maybe now he'd understand the value of foundation. Because the scaffolding he'd built his life on, that thing was made of apologies that never landed and excuses that looked like reasons. He hadn't called Richard in weeks. And Linda? Still pretending she hadn't been voted off her own island. As for me, I took the Harley out at sunset. Rolled past the house where I'd built my first life. The lawn was wild now. The shutters faded. But I didn't feel bitter. I just felt done. I had learned the most important truth betrayal will ever teach you. Loyalty is priceless. But misplacing it? You ever hold a secret so long it turns into strategy? That's what I'd been doing. Letting Linda think I was just licking my wounds. Letting Jacob think I'd moved on. Letting them all believe the man they dismissed was busy sipping bitterness and solitude. They weren't entirely wrong. But what they didn't know? I'd been working with a notary, a financial advisor, and my lawyer Linda, the other Linda, the one with more bite than the ex ever had. And what I was building wasn't just a new life. It was an audit. You see, long before this wedding mess, I'd set up a trust. Modest, but meaningful. College fund, emergency cash, a safety net for Jacob. The one thing I held on to even after the divorce swallowed everything else. I never told Jacob about it. Figured one day, when he became a father himself, I'd hand it over. Let him build something better than what I inherited. But then he invited Richard to stand in my place. And I realized, you don't leave your tools in the hands of someone who doesn't know what they're holding. So I met with my attorney. Quietly restructured the trust. Jacob's name came off the front. Not out of revenge, out of principle. And instead, I redirected the funds to the local Veterans Housing Project and to Maggie's Bakery, which she'd been trying to turn into a community hub for foster youth who'd aged out of the system. That's where I dropped the next match. I sent Linda an envelope. Thin, clean. Inside was a notarized document outlining the changes, legally binding, fully executed, and no longer reversible. On top, a note in my handwriting. Your legacy ends where your loyalty did. No anger. No threats. Just the facts. I sent Jacob a copy too. His response came an hour later. I understand. No begging. No denial. Just 3 words that told me he finally saw it. It wasn't about money. It was about meaning. What you value. Who you protect. And what happens when you bet against the wrong man because you mistook silence for surrender. Later that week, Maggie brought over a cinnamon loaf. I poured us 2 coffees, and we sat on the porch. No talk of Linda. No talk of Jacob. Just breeze, sun, and the sound of 2 people who knew what loss tasted like and chose not to make bitterness their favorite flavor. Somewhere across town, I imagine Linda staring at that letter. At the trust she thought she'd benefit from through Jacob. At the door she helped slam shut. And realizing, maybe for the first time, that I never needed revenge. I just needed the record set straight. Richard always fancied himself a winner. The polished type. White smile, tailored blazer, handshake like a sales pitch. He was the kind of man who thought charm could cover rot, and for a while, it did. He was Linda's prize. She wore him like a trophy around her new social circle, the one I apparently didn't belong in because I worked with my hands, instead of PowerPoint presentations. But what Richard never saw, what neither of them saw, was that the pedestal they put him on wasn't made of marble. It was made of my sacrifice. See, he didn't build a damn thing. Not the family. Not the home. Not the history. He just stepped in when the foundation was already poured. And then he had the nerve to call me bitter when I didn't clap for his role as bonus dad. Bonus dad. You ever hear something that stupid? What kind of man accepts a wedding invite knowing he's officiating the ceremony that cuts out the groom's actual father, the one who raised him, paid for his braces, and coached his little league team? An opportunist. But here's the thing about opportunists. When the wind shifts, they're the first ones scrambling for cover. I heard through Janine, Linda's sister, bless her honesty, that Richard started slipping out the back door long before the wedding fell apart. The credit cards stopped working. The investments he bragged about? Tied up in a company being quietly investigated for fraud. Turns out Richard didn't just steal wives. He embezzled. And when Linda's world started caving in after the wedding cancellation, he didn't bring sandbags. He brought a parachute and bailed. No goodbye. No, let's work through this. Just silence and a deactivated phone. The man who was going to step in where I stepped out? Gone. Linda tried calling his firm. They said he'd been let go. Mutual decision, of course. Always is when you get caught skimming off the top. I didn't laugh. Not right away. But that night, sitting with Maggie on the porch, drinking black coffee while the stars came out? Yeah, I laughed then. Because Richard wasn't a villain. He was a decoration. Linda thought she traded grit for gold. But all she did was swap a working man for a walking liability. The last I heard of him, he was spotted at a bar 3 towns over, flirting with a bartender half his age and spinning some story about starting fresh. Let him. Men like him don't start over. They just repeat. Same suit. Different script. But eventually, even charm wears out its welcome. And when it does, all you're left with is the wreckage of people who once believed in you. Which is why, when people ask if I miss Linda, if I'd ever take her back if she came crawling, I say this. You don't take back the match that burned down your house. You sweep the ashes and build something better. You know what happens after the noise fades? People start noticing the quiet ones. I've been living on this same block for over 20 years. Raised Jacob here. Mowed the same lawn every Saturday. Helped old man Whitaker replace his gutters twice, even after he forgot my name the second time. But for a long while, I was just that guy. The one with the divorce. The one whose wife left him for that corporate guy with the lake house. I was the cautionary tale, the whispered proof that even the dependable ones can lose it all. Until the wedding. Word spread fast. One neighbor said I'd snapped. Another called it ballsy. Mrs. D'Angelo down the street said she always knew Linda had that kind of venom in her. I never confirmed anything. Didn't need to. Truth doesn't need a megaphone. It just needs time. That's when the conversation started shifting. The teenager next door, Trey, asked if I'd teach him how to change his oil. Said his dad split a year ago and his mom couldn't afford a mechanic. I showed him how, then let him borrow my jack stands and told him to keep the filter wrench. Mr. Franklin, 2 houses down, knocked on my door with a busted fence post and a 6-pack of beer. Said he could pay, but I told him no. Just hold the level steady and we'd call it even. And Maggie? She started leaving loaves on porches. Just because, she said. Even the sour ones on the HOA board started smiling more after a slice of her banana walnut. Little by little, we weren't just neighbors anymore. We were rebuilding something. A community. Not the plastic, HOA-regulated neighborhood watch kind. The real kind. The one where a man's worth isn't judged by his front porch decor, but by whether he shows up when the lights go out. The same people who used to look at me with pity? Now they watch me with something else in their eyes. Respect. Not because I screamed. Not because I fought. But because I didn't. I just stood tall. Took the hit. And kept building. They saw the house that still stood. The garage that still opened at dawn. The man who'd been cast out of his own family event and never once let it turn him bitter toward the world outside. They saw a survivor. Hell, maybe even something rarer than that these days. They saw a man who held his line. And in that small little corner of the world, that meant something again. It was Saturday. Garage door wide open. Blues on the radio. Maggie's cinnamon loaf on the workbench, half gone already. I was under the hood of my neighbor's '04 Tacoma when I heard it. 3 short knocks on the doorframe. I didn't need to look up. I knew the rhythm. Used to hear it every time Jacob forgot his keys as a kid. But this time, he wasn't locked out of a house. He was locked out of something much heavier. Hey, he said. I stayed under the hood a few seconds longer than necessary. Let him sit in that silence. Got a minute? I wiped my hands slow. Didn't offer a smile. Didn't offer shade. But I nodded. He didn't sit. He stood, arms folded tight like he was keeping something from falling apart inside. I've been thinking, he started. Careful. I said. That's how weddings get canceled. He gave a half chuckle, but it didn't land. His eyes were hollow. Honest. Everything fell apart, he said. Richard bailed. Mom's, well, she's in her own kind of fallout. Still trying to paint herself as the victim? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. Said you poisoned everything. Son, I said, I didn't poison anything. I just stopped swallowing it. He looked down. I didn't see it. Not until after Kelsey left. After the venue ghosted us. After Mom started spinning different stories to different people and none of them lined up. I said nothing. Because some things need to sit in the air before you cut them down. I'm not here to beg, he said. I just wanted to look you in the eye and say it. Say what? That I let you down. His voice cracked then. Not from weakness, from weight. The kind of weight a man only feels once he realizes he's been standing on someone else's shoulders and never once looked down to say thank you. I didn't defend you, he went on. I let her write a version of you that made it easier for me to ignore the hard stuff. I let Richard, that smug bastard, stand in for a man who never missed a damn game, never missed a dinner, never walked away. He paused. I betrayed you. There it was. The thing he should have said the day he signed the wedding contract. The day he put another man's name in my place. I stared at him. Let it hang. Are you asking for forgiveness? I asked. No, he said. I don't deserve it yet. That's when I saw it. The shift. The boy I raised, the man who got lost, was finally starting to crawl back through the wreckage. I pointed at the empty chair beside my tool bench. Then start here, I said. He sat. Didn't ask what needed fixing. Just waited for me to hand him a wrench. And for the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the silence between us could turn into something solid again. It came by certified mail. Again. Same tight script. Same cream envelope. Same attempt at elegance wrapped around something rotten. Inside, an invitation. Not to anything official. Not a wedding. Not a dinner. Not even a fake therapy session to talk it out. No. This was pure Linda. A closure brunch. I kid you not. She actually used the word closure in bold, gold font. Said it was at some boutique cafe downtown. Said Jacob was invited. Said she wanted to clear the air and restore what could be salvaged. You ever see someone dig through the ashes of a house they torched and try to rearrange the soot like it's furniture? That was Linda. She wanted optics. Wanted the performance of healing. The look of grace. She probably pictured herself in a linen dress, sipping imported tea, offering sage nods and teary half-apologies to anyone who'd give her a second shot at being seen as the misunderstood matriarch. I didn't respond. Jacob called me 2 days before the so-called brunch. She's pushing hard, he said. Told me she'd invite the whole family, try to start over. I asked him one question. Do you want to go? He was quiet. Then no. I want to stay where it's honest. So we didn't go. Neither of us. But Maggie did. I didn't ask her to. Wouldn't have. But she showed up that Sunday with a quiet smile and a sharper edge in her purse than Linda could have guessed. Maggie told me later how it went. Linda showed up early. Alone. No Richard, no friends, no backup. Just a carefully curated image she still believed people would buy. She looked surprised to see Maggie. Even more surprised when she realized Maggie wasn't there for reconciliation. She was there to witness the end. Linda asked if she thought I'd come. Maggie told her, he's busy building a life that doesn't require your permission. Linda tried to turn it, of course. Said she was misunderstood. That she acted out of pain. That none of it was personal. Maggie leaned in, real calm. It's always personal when you step on the man who built your entire foundation. Linda left before the tea got cold. Didn't pay the bill. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked out the side door of her own last act. No applause. No encore. Just the quiet realization that when you burn everyone around you for your own warmth, eventually, you freeze. We were back in the garage. Same old folding chair. Same stack of half-fixed tools on the bench. Blues still humming low from the radio. Jacob was holding a wrench like it meant something more now. Not a tool, a symbol. Something solid. Something real. Maybe the first damn thing in his hands that hadn't been passed down through a lie. Dad, he said. I waited. He didn't look at me right away. Just stared at the floor like the answer might be buried in the oil stain under his boots. Was it always this broken? There it was. The question no one wants to ask, because deep down they already know. I leaned back on the stool. No, I said. Not always. He let out a breath. But I wasn't finished. But the cracks? They started early. He looked up. Your mother. She had a talent. Not for love, not for loyalty. For survival. She could make you feel needed, but never trusted. Loved, but only on her terms. If you ever stood too tall, too solid, too sure, she'd chip at you until you fit her shape again. He swallowed hard. I remember, I continued, one night when you were 10. You were crying because you forgot your lines for the school play. She told you to get over it. Said you were embarrassing yourself. But then she took a video of your performance later and posted it like she'd coached you to greatness. Jacob's face changed. Not surprise. Recognition. That's why I always felt like I had to be perfect, I finished. Not because you wanted to be. Because you were scared of what her love would cost if you weren't. We sat in it for a long while. He broke the silence. I feel like I've been building a life out of borrowed parts. Her version of me. Richard's version. Even yours, sometimes. I nodded. That's fair. But none of it's mine. I looked at him. Really looked. And saw it. The man trying to be born out of the boy who never got a say in his own story. Then build it, I said. Not for me. Not against her. For you. He blinked fast. Pulled his cap down low over his brow. I let him be. Later that night, you sent me a message. Thanks for still being here. Even when I made it hard to be. I didn't reply with words. I just left the garage light on. Because some sons don't need sermons. They just need to know the door didn't lock behind them when they ran out. It was one of those evenings that comes with no soundtrack. Just breeze. Dimming sky. The kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled. It just is. Maggie and I were on the porch again. 2 mugs. 1 blanket shared between us. She hadn't said much since the closure brunch, but tonight something hung behind her eyes. Like a storm waiting for permission to rain. You ever wonder, she said, if we become protectors because we know what it feels like to be unprotected? I looked at her. Every damn day. She nodded. Slow. Her fingers traced the rim of the mug. I stayed married to a drunk for 17 years, she said. The kind of man who'd charm the pants off a church choir at Sunday service, and then tear through our kitchen like a hurricane by Monday. I said nothing. Because you don't interrupt stories like that. You hold space for them. He never hit me, she said. And that's the trap. People assume that if they don't see bruises, it's not abuse. But words can rot your bones quieter than fists ever could. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. I stayed for our daughter. Told myself she needed a father. Thought if I just kept smiling, kept baking, kept folding the towels right, it'd be okay. She paused. She left at 16. Said she couldn't stay in a house where I let it happen. There it was. The crack in her calm. The one she'd covered with cinnamon sugar and careful smiles. She came back around, years later, Maggie said, when he finally drank himself into a hospital bed. But it's different now. We love each other, but there's distance in it. I squeezed her hand. Distance isn't always punishment, I said. Sometimes it's just protection with a longer rope. She smiled at that. A real one this time. I think that's why I stayed at your table, she said. Not because you were broken, but because you were honest about it. I didn't deserve that kindness, but I accepted it. Because healing? It doesn't come in fireworks or speeches. It comes in shared silences and the sound of someone finally staying. Later that night, she kissed me. No music. No build-up. Just the soft certainty of 2 people who knew what it meant to have been discarded and chose, instead, to see each other fully. That was the moment I realized something important. Linda took years of my life. Richard took what he never earned. Jacob took a detour that cost me trust. But Maggie? She gave me presence. And that? That was something no one had handed me in a long, long time. Jacob asked if he could stop by. Alone. No tools. No excuses. Just a calm look in his eyes that told me he wasn't showing up to talk about his mother anymore. He was showing up to talk to her. I'm going over there, he said. To her place. I nodded. Not encouragement. Not approval. Just acknowledgement. Because this wasn't my battle anymore. This was his reckoning now. She's been texting, he said. Voice notes. Little guilt daggers dressed as memories. What's she want? He didn't hesitate. Control. Like always. We sat for a few more minutes. Then he left. Didn't ask for advice. Didn't need armor. Just grabbed his jacket and went. I didn't ask how it went. Figured if it mattered, he'd tell me. And he did, a day later. We were back on the porch. Same old chairs. Same night air. But this time he had a kind of weightlessness to him I hadn't seen since he was a teenager riding bikes too fast down steep hills. I told her the truth, he said. All of it. Told her she manipulated me. that she dressed her lies up like protection and made me think choosing her was the same thing as loving her. He shook his head. She cried, played her old cards, said I didn't understand what she went through. Did you respond? I asked. Yeah, he said. I told her I never would, because she never let me. And then he paused. She asked if we'd ever be close again. And I told her closeness without honesty is just hostage-taking. That line stayed with me, not just because of how true it was, but because it came from him. My son. The same kid who once apologized just for asking to stay up late. The same young man who stood by while another man took his father's place at his own wedding. That man was gone. In his place stood someone who had finally taken back the pen, the one Linda had used to write his story for far too long. And the ending was finally his to choose. She came back on a Tuesday. Kelsey pulled into the driveway in a rust-colored sedan that had seen better days and held more stories than either of us could count. She stepped out with a calm I hadn't seen in her since before the wedding disaster. No makeup, no mask, just her. Jacob was inside. Maggie too. They'd both offered to stay back, but I told them no. Some moments aren't about audience. They're about witnesses. I met Kelsey on the porch. No handshake. No hug. Just two people who'd been tossed into the same explosion, standing on the other side of the blast, still breathing. I came to say thank you, she said. You're not the one who was anything, I said. She smiled, but there was pain in it. The kind that comes with hindsight sharper than the fall. I stayed too long in something I knew was breaking, she said. I thought if I just loved hard enough, Jacob would find his spine again. But I realized, love isn't CPR. You can't keep pumping life into something that refuses to breathe on its own. I nodded. He's finding it now. I know, she said. That's why I came. She handed me an envelope. Not thick. Not dramatic. Just one folded letter inside. No wax seal. No performance. I wrote this for him. Not to win him back. Just to let it go the right way. I didn't read it. Not my story. She looked past me into the yard, like it held something sacred. Maybe it did. Maybe the truth is that sometimes the most honest moments happen in the quiet corners, not the ceremony, not the courtroom, not the apology brunches or dinner table meltdowns. Just here. I'm starting over, she said. Different town. Fresh air. A job that pays less but makes me feel more. I smiled. Sounds right. Before she left, she turned to me. Whatever happens next, she said, you should know something. What's that? You're the kind of man a woman remembers. Not because you chased validation, but because you stood still while everyone else ran. I didn't have words for that, but I didn't need them. Sometimes, silence is the only thing strong enough to carry real meaning. She drove off with the windows down. No music playing. No rearview glances. Just a woman who'd been hurt, who had healed enough to let go, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with truth.